That brought me back to the original Alien versus Predator. You play as the humans, and you've got this terrifying shooter experience. And I never saw the point of playing as.
Do you mean the one in about 98, 99 that was 3D? You could shoot the lights out, and you could play as Alien, Predator, and Marines. Yeah,
right. And originally it was going to be like 3 completely separate stories, and then to test them, they just reused the same level, and they realized, why don't we just make this the same story from 3 points of view?
Yeah.
The first time you play as the alien changes that experience so much. You feel so mobile and so powerful, even as a face hugger.
Mm-hmm. You soon realize the first mission is
you are, though. Find a face and then hug and hug it and keep safe until you're born as a chest burster. Like that is the mission. I love playing as the Predator because there's so much you could do there. And then when you fight the aliens, it's just modern zombie game, right? Fast, screamy.
It's a horde.
But it was fascinating, and that brings us back to games where you could play as a zombie. I know Left 4 Dead has that. Left 4 Dead 2 has that that multiplayer mode where some of you can be zombies. That's fine. But it would be kind of fascinating to make a game where you have that kind of mobility, not in a sort of multiplayer game, but you're really fragile.
Yeah. Now, I definitely, especially if you played online, and I played a lot. It's the first online competition I ever won. Way back. I won 50 quid. It cost about 400 quid in phone bill, but I won 50 quid. It was good. But when you were playing, the thing that with the alien was you could do this thing where if you hold the view up at 45 degrees and jump, you'd do a pounce. But if then you were 45 degrees on the new wall, you would be able to pounce again at twice the speed. Next wall, 3 times, 4 times, 5 times.
Yeah, you could ricochet.
And you could literally, if you aimed it right in a corner, you could jump across like a 400, 500 meter level, no problem. And I was really good at the time. Like if an alien was doing that, I'd track them with a grenade and go pop. But of course, when you're in the air and you're going on a predictable path, you're an easy target anyway. But you do things like you'd whip past someone and you just go click with your tail as you're going past, whip that tail, and then they would just disintegrate. And the same would happen to you. And it was so fast and frantic. And I don't think I've played a game, and if you guys have as well, I'd be interested to know, played a game where you are so fragile, where one shot can easily take you out. I'm not talking quite like a hedge.
Blade.
Sorry?
Bushido Blade on the SNES back in the 90s, early 2000s.
Yeah.
I used to play this a lot with my friends, where this was a fighting game based on Bushido, like the samurai code. But the interesting thing was the sword fighting was pretty realistic. If you got hit with a sword, it was almost certainly going to kill you. There was no hit bar. And there were levels you could play against, NPCs and the rest of it. But when you played multiplayer, what tended to happen is you would both stand perfectly still, waiting for the other one to blink. And it was kind of fascinating. Like, it was an entirely different game. You actually felt like a samurai.
The Walking Thread. I like that. You may have AMC coming after you for that one. But I do like the premise. And I like the idea. It reminds me a bit of is it Plague Inc.? Where you're a bacteria or a virus and you try and take over the world. Because they have no awareness of you at the beginning, and one of the cards you can play is being subtle and slow. But yeah, later on they're hunting you. I think that would make a very interesting game type. Someone feel free to make that. Yeah,
there is. Shut up. There are characters like that actually in. I forgot the name of this game. One moment. Pull up Steam. We've even played it together.
Blimey. Terraria?
Yeah, that's it. That's clearly it. No. Say random thing. Streets of Rogue.
Yes.
Which is actually a fascinating game in its own right. But there is a character in there called the Zombie. And, shopkeepers and most players will either run away from you or attack you on sight. Not players, NPCs.
Yeah.
But if you kill someone, or if any zombie kills someone, they will become a zombie. If you spit on them, or whatever the attack is,
Yeah.
and then they die, they become your follower. You'll lose some health, but they'll become your follower. So very quickly, the level is just filled with zombies, which is interesting because there's always a zombie on the level because every character is on the level. But there's another character in there called the Shapeshifter who can hop. He's very small and fragile, and everyone will attack him. But if he stands behind someone, he can hop into their body.
Yeah.
Which is a lot more like The Thing, the John Carpenter movie, where you've got this shape-shifting alien that can impersonate people.
Wow.
That's a fun little thing.
Yes, yeah, I totally agree with that. That's once you've got the main game mechanic and a
Shall
way
we
of
read
winning.
it so that people who are watching the recording will know?
What's
Hi,
that?
Jessica. What you've just read.
The subtle track in Plague Inc. is what got me into the okay, I'm done here stage with that game. Yeah, once you've mastered a particular way of playing a game, it's very difficult to replay it and not just use the same tactic again because I mean, my classic one for Plague Inc. is starting somewhere like China or Russia or United States, all for different reasons, population or cold, because those tend to be hard to get.
Yeah.
And then you're as subtle as possible. And I think that's why they ended up adding the other game modes in. Because if you start, I think you start as like a bacteria, and then you've got like 5 other things you can be. And a virus has random mutations, so you can't stay hidden as easy. And I think you have to then start spending your DNA points to stay hidden. But yeah, one of the things I always did was just keep. Yes, I've got replay chat on in the recording.
Yeah, but
for
if we
people.
clip it, then we won't see it.
This is true.
One of the things I like about Plague Inc. is it's the opposite, or sort of the mirror of a board game, Pandemic, which is an amazing cooperative board game. Has a few problems with it, notably quarterbacking, which is when one player tells all the others what to do. But what I like about Pandemic is it led to my favorite board game of all time, Pandemic Legacy. And if you've not played Pandemic Legacy, one, play it with the same group of people every week. And two, play it. And I say the same group of people because Pandemic Legacy isn't like a normal game of Pandemic. Pandemic Legacy is a season. It's actually set up like a TV show. There are now 3 Pandemic Legacies plus Pandemic Legacy 0, which is set with Cold War spies.
I remember playing Pandemic Legacy, and when I came back to the friends to play it again, they had done several missions. I'm like, it's like watching episode 1 and then episode 4, and you're like, what's happened?
Yep. So what happens is you play a game, and it's a month, and you have objectives to hit. If you hit them, you win. You get less money because you don't need the resources from the world governments to fight these 4 pandemics. Or if you lose, you'll get more money. So it's a nice little balancing thing. You can play each month twice, and then if you don't do it, you just fail it, and you take the fail consequence. But you've got a deck of cards, and you've got a whole bunch of sealed boxes and sealed cards you're not allowed to open. And as you get certain things, it'll say, now turn to the book and open box 1 or peel sticker 3. And you actually make permanent changes to the cards,
I love that.
The board, add new components, add new rules. And by April, you're playing a completely different game.
Yeah.
And it's just fascinating. And then when you get to the end of the game, it is over. And you might think, but I don't want to play a board game just once. Yeah, but playing a board game 12 to 24 times is probably how many times you play a board game anyway. And the memories you get from that are incredible. I've actually played it all the way through twice with different groups of people. Had to be very careful not to spoil anything.
Of course, but the next playthrough can be completely different.
Oh, it was. It was absolutely different. I mean, I don't want to give anything away, but I will say the first time the game told me, destroy this card, blew my mind.
But you're physically, literally changing the game. It is, you're destroying it as you go forward. You can't replay that game. You'd have to buy it again. But I wouldn't think of that as a game, as a board game. It's more like a board experience that you're going to play once.
And that'd be an interesting thing to try and do with a video game. I don't know that you could actually make that work. I think that's actually something board games have over video games right now.
I was going to say there was an Infinite Runner game that was I think the game was You Only Have One Life. That was the name of the game, and the only way to play it more than once, i.e., you jump between buildings, I think it was, and if you died, and I was like, huh, and then it went, just shows you your tombstone or something like that in your high score. And the only way of getting it back on your phone to play it again would be to factory reset the phone, because it obviously stores a setting somewhere to say you've died. I was like,
Yep.
oh, that's a bit harsh.
But yeah, I really recommend Pandemic Legacy. There's this amazing thing that happens around April or March or May, depending on how well you guys are doing. Where you're told to open a certain box, and you open the box, and everyone sees the components in it, and everyone just freaks out. Like, what are those?